As the cries of a stranded juvenile orca echoed through the misty waters, a team of researchers raced against time and nature to save a life hanging in the balance. Would they succeed before the tide turned? Dive into this heart-pounding rescue mission, and don't forget to subscribe to The Unusual for more thrilling stories. This story unfolded not far off the Canadian coastline. On a bright July morning, Alex Quinn, a dedicated whale researcher, was aboard a marine research vessel near the coast of British Columbia. Alex was engrossed in studying local fin whales when suddenly, shrill cries echoed across the sea. The research team immediately recognized the distress call of a juvenile orca lodged between the rocks. Unsure of the appropriate rescue methods, Alex promptly reached out to orca experts from a nearby ecological group, informing them of the pressing situation. After assessing the circumstances, the marine experts concluded that a pod of killer whales had likely cornered a group of seals for a hunt. The killer whales split into groups, driving the seals closer to the shoreline, while other members lay in wait. Unfortunately, the young orca seemed to have underestimated its capabilities and got beached on the rocks during low tide, its freedom restricted. The creature whimpered in terror and agony, helpless, while both its kin and humans watched its plight. Alex knew their intervention was imperative, so he called out to his associates, whale experts George and Kevin, who were nearby. While en route to assist, the scientists connected with two other environmental groups, understanding the severity of the situation and hoping their insights would be beneficial. As Alex and his team grew nearer to the orca, they laid out a plan to assess the creature's predicament. However, they were mindful not to encroach too closely to avoid provoking it and causing more injuries with the jagged rocks. Considering the delicate situation, attempting to extricate the orca was deemed overly risky, as it could lead to severe harm. The orca showed signs of minor injuries, with scratches from the rocks visible on its back and tail fin. After conversing over the phone, the expert team suggested providing the beached creature with as much water as possible as a precaution against dehydration, which could prove fatal. Their objective was to keep the creature alive and stable until the arrival of high tide. Everyone was aware that the day ahead would be exhausting, both physically and emotionally, and quickly swung into action. The young orca was understandably jittery whenever humans approached, baring its teeth in fear. But the humans were there to assist, and the real dangers were dehydration and the force of gravity. Whales marooned on dry land don't survive long because their tremendous size prevents them from breathing properly once out of water. Seeing that predicament, Alex, accompanied by his friend, promptly put together a makeshift water pump using a hose and a small motor to hydrate the troubled marine creature. Concurrently, other team members shielded the orca with fabric drenched in salt water. The disturbed animal seemed slightly pacified, and its cries were less intense while the whale's family watched from a distance. It became imperative to keep the stricken creature generously drenched. Luckily, the climate was relatively chilly and cloudy. However, 2 hours in, the sun emerged, signaling a perilous phase for the orca. The volunteers had to intensify their efforts. If Alex hadn't responded to its cries in time, the aquatic creature's fate would have been different. Until then, the team had not draped the orca's head with cloth to avoid alarming it further. Nevertheless, with the sun's rays becoming fiercer, they decided to cover its head, taking care not to obstruct its breath and inadvertently cause choking. The orca was in the prime of its life, estimated to be just 8 or 9 years old, considered fairly young for a species that lives around 50 years on average. The marine beast weighed about 3 tons. In comparison, grown specimens can weigh up to 10 tons. Had it been older and heavier, the internal pressure on its respiratory system would have been overwhelming, making survival until the next high tide questionable. The subsequent problem was the failure of the water pump motor. Fixing it was not feasible in their tight spot, so the group had to resort to manually hydrating the orca with seawater using the saturated fabric pieces. This frantic race against time lasted for 8 hours, but the team was determined and unwavering. Luckily, towards the end of the 8th hour, the tide began to come in, and the water level gradually rose. This allowed the group to slowly remove all the fabric pieces from the orca's body. They retreated to a nearby ridge to ensure they didn't prompt it to venture into the sea prematurely, which could have resulted in serious injuries. As the water submerged the orca's body, it began to flick its tail vigorously, but did not make any efforts to escape its rocky confinement. The animal might have harmed itself and was deteriorating, risking demise, or had become drastically frail in the exposed environment. The crew had no option but to remain patient and keep their hopes alive. Eventually, the orca used its remaining energy to throw itself down from the rocks into the water, triggering a wave of relief and cheers among its saviors. The juvenile orca was finally able to rejoin her family, enduring only minor abrasions in the traumatizing experience, a sight that evoked an audible gasp of joy and relief from those actively participating in its rescue. The juvenile whale was ultimately reunited with its kin, suffering merely light grazes on the abdomen and the psychological repercussions of the ordeal. Indeed, such an atypical tale. If this video resonates with you, we encourage you to express your appreciation by liking it and subscribing to our channel. Until next time, goodbye.